Hey guys, we're at video number 47. So close to the finish line now. Today we'll be working on the brake fluid top as well as some hose connectors. Time for another round with the gizmo. Pick out the cylinder 3D from the gear again, this time setting the H divides to 32. Unmask the top and move it down a bit. Extrude using the control key and moving with the gizmo. Let's go ahead and Q-mesh that poly loop. Now bevel those two edge loops and Q-mesh the poly loop once more. Then control click on the poly group to unmask it and move it down to the bottom. Let's do an inset on the flat island. Then add a few edge loops. Now it's time to split the point. Let's use the gizmo as a marker on the point so you know which point to split on the other side. Go ahead and Q-mesh the poly group island. Then we can Q-mesh it a couple more times. Press QC50 and Ctrl W to group visible. Now we can select Insert Multiple Edge Loops and set the crease level to 3. Unmask the edge loop and move it down a bit. Go ahead and alt tag the polys to transpose. Clicking alt again will remove the tag. Now we can control and move with the gizmo to extrude. Then we can slide the edges down a bit. Add a few more edge loops and press QC50 again. Now we can clean up any creases with the Z modeler brush. Next, poly group that poly loop. Unmask the poly group and scale it down. We're almost done, just delete the inner edge loop. Unmask the cylinder and move it over. With the gizmo, select the cylinder 3D from the gear once more, setting the H divides to 64. Unmask those bottom polys and move them up a touch. Unmask the top polys next and extrude them. Scale them in and clear the mask. Remember to turn on symmetry in the Z-axis and set the radial count to 16. Now inset the poly loop and Q-mesh the poly group island. We're going to press QC50 again. Crease those edge loops, but uncrease the edges of the extrusions. Let's slide the edges down to match the angle. Select Insert Multiple Edge Loops and then uncrease them. Finally hit Ctrl W to group visible and add some edge loops on the top. Alright, let's continue. Fire up the gizmo again and select the cylinder 3D from the gear. This time unmask the bottom polys and give them a lift. Now we can extrude them using the gizmo. Next we want to scale it up. Keep on extruding and scaling till you match the reference. Let's go ahead and throw in a few edge loops for good measure. Let's scale in that top edge loop and add a few more edge loops to quad it up. The next step is to Q-mesh that poly loop. Press QC50 and tidy up those creases with the ZBrush. Then we can Q-mesh the poly loop again. Press Ctrl W to group visible and set the crease level to 3. Hold Ctrl and move with the gizmo to make a duplicate. Set the poly count to 0.5 for the Dynamesh utility. Then give it a polish. We'll lock in the shape better during the retopple stage, so don't worry about it. Back to the gizmo, select the cylinder 3D from the gear. Press Unify this time. Unmask the top and move it down a bit. Inset the flat island and Q-mesh the polygroup island. Mask the model, bring up the gizmo and from the gear select cylinder 3D. Rotate it 90 degrees and scale it on the Z axis. Let's move it up and give it a little rotation. Duplicate it with the gizmo and let's find the right spot for it. Go ahead and delete the flat island. Then select bridge for the edge action with 2 holes and circle for the target. Isolate the polygroups and hit auto groups. Control click with the gizmo to unmask the polygroup and select slide edge loop complete. Then we can unmask the cylinder, rotate it 180 degrees, and duplicate by holding Ctrl and moving with the gizmo. Rotate it about 12 degrees and press Ctrl W to group visible. Now we can polygroup the flat islands. Control click with the gizmo to unmask the polygroup, and then extrude by holding Ctrl and moving with the gizmo. Press QC50 and auto group. Now we can grab the Move Infinite Depth brush. Let's go ahead and press Toggle Mask by Polygroups. and press QC50 again. Uncrease those edges and add a few more edge loops to both cylinders. Set the crease level to 3 and use the clip curve brush to flatten out the top. Set the poly count to 0.5 for the Dynamesh utility and give it another polish. Now we can turn off Toggle Mask by Polygroups and start smoothing those meshes together. Let's grab the clip curve brush to shape the sides. Set the resolution using the picker and run a Dynamesh. Let's go ahead and smooth it out a bit more. Now we can mask the model, bring up the gizmo and select the cylinder 3D from the gear. Set the H divides to 100 and rotate it 90 degrees. Let's go ahead and scale and move it into position. Hold Control and move with the gizmo to duplicate. Clear the mask, run a Dynamesh, and polish it up. Finally, let's grab the polish brush to flatten the surface.